Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Have you ever wondered what happens when someone's desire for more becomes so great that they are willing to challenge God's authority to obtain it? In this week's Torah portion, Parashat Korach, we witness one of the largest rebellions in the middle of the desert, a moment that leads us to ask what happens when God's authority is questioned. Korah, along with Dathan, Abiram, and 250 leaders of Israel, rebelled against Moses and Aaron, accusing them of exalting themselves above the people. Moses responded by saying that Adonai would reveal whom he had chosen. He instructed the rebels to bring censers with incense before the Lord, allowing God himself to judge the matter. At the heart of Korah's rebellion was discontentment. Although Korah and many of his followers already had important roles, serving as Levites, they wanted more. Comparing themselves to others led them to believe God had been unfair to them. In reality, they were not simply rejecting Moses' authority. They were rejecting God's appointed order. When Dathan and Abiram refused to come before Moses, they falsely accused him of leading the people to destruction and trying to make himself ruler over them. Rather than defending himself, Moses placed the matter in God's hands. God instructed the people to move away from the tents of the rebels. Moses declared that if these men died an ordinary death, then God had not sent him. But if something unprecedented happened, it would prove that they had rejected Adonai. Immediately, the earth opened and swallowed Korah, Dathan, Abiram, their households, and all that belonged to them. A teaching found in the Talmud adds a great detail to this moment. It describes how some of the elders of Israel later passed by the area and heard a voice coming from beneath the ground, crying out, "Moshe is true, and his Torah is true, but we are liars." Even in judgment, the story emphasizes that Korah ultimately recognized that he had been wrong, but only after it was too late. Returning to the biblical account, fire then consumed the 250 men offering incense. Their censers were later attached to the altar by Eleazar the Kohen as a permanent reminder of God's judgment. Yet even after witnessing these events, the people continued to complain against Moses and Aaron. As a result, a plague broke out among the Israelites, killing 14,700 people. Aaron made atonement with incense, and the plague was stopped. The message of this parsha is very clear. When people reject the order God has established, they place themselves in opposition to his authority. Korah did not merely challenge Moses, he challenged the authority of God himself. The outcome teaches that holiness and leadership are not things we claim for ourselves. They are gifts and responsibilities entrusted by God. But this lesson is not limited to the people of Israel at that time. Even today, people often struggle to accept the roles, responsibilities, and boundaries that God has given them. Like Korah, we can become dissatisfied with where God has placed us and begin seeking our own way instead of trusting his. When that happens, we may begin to question his wisdom, his timing, or even his authority. At many points in my life, I've been discontent with where God has placed me, and I've wanted to grow up faster, to have a greater influence, and be able to do more. Things like getting educated on how smartphones and laptops work. But this Torah portion is a prime example of why I shouldn't let discontentment get to my head and focus on what I do have. I should be satisfied with where God has placed me, and I should enjoy where I am right now. We all should. I should also enjoy the time as a teenager I have, because once I grow up, I'm not going to get summer vacation anymore. Regarding this, a Bible verse I'd like to share that has helped me realize that is Job 37:5. God thunders wondrously with his voice. He does great things beyond our comprehension. This verse reminds us how we aren't always going to be where we want to in life, but God's purpose for us can sometimes lie beyond our understanding. When we forget that, we may begin to question his wisdom, his timing, or even his authority. But contentment does not mean abandoning our goals. It means trusting that God knows the right time to bring them about. This lesson does not end with Parashat Korach. It is continued in this week's Haftarah, which is found in 1 Samuel chapters 11 and 12. The Haftarah begins in verse 14 of chapter 11, with Saul being publicly established as king over Israel in Gilgal, and the people rejoicing. Even though Saul is now king, Samuel makes it clear that their future still depends on staying faithful to Adonai. In the next chapter, Samuel reminds the people that Adonai has been faithful to them throughout their history. He makes it clear that Adonai led them, delivered them, and remained faithful to them, even when they turned away from him. So what connects Parashat Korach and the Haftarah? Both clearly teach that God is the ultimate authority. In Parashat Korach, this authority is challenged, but in the Haftarah, the people of Israel are reminded that they cannot replace the authority of Adonai, even if they have a king. In the Brit Chadashah reading of Matthew 26, we see two very different responses to Yeshua. A woman pours out an expensive perfume upon him, holding nothing back in worship and devotion. Shortly afterward, Judas, agrees to betray Yeshua for 30 pieces of silver. One heart is filled with gratitude and surrender. The other becomes consumed by selfish desire. At first glance, this seems far removed from Parashat Korah, yet both portions reveal the same spiritual warning. Korah was not satisfied with the role HaShem had given him. Instead of faithfully serving as a Levite, he desired the authority and position entrusted to Moses and Aaron. What began as discontentment grew into pride, rebellion, and ultimately judgment. Likewise, Judah walked with the Messiah, witnessed miracles, heard his teachings, and experienced his love firsthand, yet somewhere along the way, his heart drifted. Discontentment opened the door to greed, and greed led to betrayal. In contrast, the woman who anointed Yeshua demonstrates the heart HaShem desires. She was not seeking position, power, or personal gain. She simply loved and honored the Messiah with all she had. The lesson for us is clear. When we become dissatisfied and discontent with what HaShem has entrusted to us, we place ourselves in the danger of envy, pride, and rebellion. But when we cultivate gratitude and contentment in HaShem, we choose humility, faithfulness, and worship. How can this connect to Yeshua? This connects to him because, unlike Korah, Yeshua did not challenge God's ordained order, but instead, he perfectly fulfilled it. Korah tried to approach God on his own terms, but Yeshua came in full submission to the will of God and accomplished what he was sent to do. Through his life, death, and resurrection, God appointed him as the one who brings us near to himself. As it says in Matthew 5:17, "Do not think that I came to abolish the Torah and the prophets. I did not come to abolish, but to fulfill." This shows that Yeshua does not oppose God's order, but completes it. Through him, we are invited to come near to God in the way he has established. What did this teach me personally? The story of Korah taught me that discontentment can have serious consequences. Korah and his followers were not satisfied with the roles God has given them, and their desire for more led them into rebellion. This reminds me of how easy it is to focus on what we don't have instead of appreciating what we do have. One experience that helped me understand this was a school project about people living in unstable and impoverished countries. Researching their daily struggles made me realize how blessed many of us are. Things we often take for granted: running water, toilets, washing machines, dishwashers, reliable food, and even a safe place to live, are luxuries many people around the world do not have. Many of us don't appreciate those things until they stop working, of course. Because of this, the story of Korah encourages me to be grateful for what God has provided, rather than constantly comparing myself to what others have, or wanting more. When we become consumed with what we lack, we can lose sight of God's wisdom and goodness in our lives. The question for us today is not whether God is in control, but whether we are willing to trust His authority in our lives. Like Korah, we can be tempted toward discontentment and comparison. Or like the people of Israel in Samuel's time, we can forget where our true security and identity come from. But we should ultimately walk in humility, trust, and obedience before Adonai. God's order is not meant to limit us. His authority is not meant to diminish us. And His timing is not meant to discourage us. Instead, His plan for each of us is far greater than we can see or understand in the moment. Shabbat Shalom.
Beautiful.